cost. It produces a diversified range of products. It produces basic consumer product. It sells its products in a number of different markets. This should be simple. You tell me, right? So when are the profits volatile? Volatility means that sometimes the profits are very high, sometimes the profits are very low, right? Now you have to look for an option which is showing fluctuation. You have to look for an option where uncertainty will be more, or when there will be more fluctuations for a business. And any option that shows that the business is well diversified, right? And if any of the option that shows that the business is well diversified, like it's operating in different markets and different products, then that cannot be the answer. Why? Because if one market is not doing well, you can sell it in the other market. If one product is not doing that well, you can sell the other product. How many of you are getting what I'm saying over here? Right? So what increases volatility or fluctuations? When there's more uncertainty. Out of all these, in which case would there be most uncertainty? Isha and Albab, tell me, out of these four options, in which case would the uncertainty be the highest? So can B be the answer? Can be the answer? No, Arbab, B cannot be the answer, because it says a diversified range of products. Now, what diversified range of products mean is that you're producing a lot of different products. So you're producing food items, you're producing clothes, you're producing shoes. So if one product is not doing that great, you will be able to sell it in the other market. B and D can't be the answer. It sells the products in a number of different markets. Exactly. Very nice, right? Arbab, अभी मैंने जैसे आपको बताया ना कि अगर आप बहुत ज्यादा डिफरेंट प्रोडक्ट्स बना रहे हैं, राइट, तो अगर एक प्रोडक्ट अच्छी नहीं जा रही, उसकी डिमांड कम है, तो यू विल बी एबल टू सेल द अदर प्रोडक्ट, राइट? इसी को तो डाइवर्सिफिकेशन कहते हैं. तो उसमें आपकी बहुत ज्यादा फ्लक्चुएशन नहीं होगी प्रॉफिट में, राइट? यू विल बी हैविंग अ स्टेबल बिजनेस. एंड इवन सी इज वेरी स्टेबल. बेसिक कंज्यूमर प्रोडक्ट क्या होगी? बेसिक कंज्यूमर प्रोडक्ट क्या है? लेट्स से यू आर सेलिंग clothes, or you're selling toothbrush, or you're selling toothpaste. Now this is a very basic consumer product that all people have to buy, right? तो उसकी मार्केट बहुत बड़ी होती है, उसकी मार्केट बहुत बड़ी होती है. Yes, the answer is A. No, ईशा, think about this. जब फिक्स कॉस्ट हाई होती है तो आपका ब्रेक इवन पॉइंट हाई होता है. मतलब कि टू कवर योर कॉस्ट यू हैव टू प्रोड्यूस अ बिग आउटपुट. आप मेरी बात समझ रहे हैं? इसको इस तरह समझें. फिक्स कॉस्ट में क्या होता है कि you have already committed a certain thing, like you have already committed a certain cost, right? And to cover up for your cost, you have to produce a large level of output. You have to produce a large level of output before you can cover your fixed cost, and only after that you will start earning profit. I mean, let me give you another example. So why are businesses transitioning to online selling? Because obviously one reason was that now people use online selling more, online buying, they are more used to it. Second reason why they're using it, because it has no fixed cost. तो अगर आपका स्टॉक नहीं बनता, आपको सिर्फ उतना प्रोड्यूस करना है जितना बिकेगा, right? You can more accurately estimate how much will be the demand in the market. You don't need to open fancy shops. You don't have to pay rent. Exactly. You don't have to pay rent, electricity. You don't have to hire salespeople. There are no salespeople in online selling, right? Once a person likes your product, he'll just order. So he or she doesn't need to ask you price care, quality care, right? So it's all on the consumer to determine all those things, or the consumer can ask you, but you're getting my point. ठीक है? अब देखें, इस क्वेश्चन में आप लोगों को एक चीज देखनी है कि समटाइम्स एंड इवन इन द एग्जाम यू हैव टू एलिमिनेट द अदर ऑप्शंस. सी क्यों नहीं हो सकता? डी भी नहीं हो सकता, नंबर ऑफ डिफरेंट मार्केट्स है. बी भी नहीं हो सकता, डाइवर्सिफाइड प्रोडक्ट्स हैं. सी भी नहीं हो सकता क्योंकि बेसिक कंज्यूमर प्रोडक्ट्स हैं. सो इफ यू आर सेलिंग समथिंग वेरी बेसिक, एवरीवन हैज टू बाय. द मार्केट इज बिग, राइट? गॉट इट? ठीक है जी. Okay, a country government wishes to switch demand away from private consumption to investment and net exports. Which combination of policy measures would be most likely to help achieve this objective? So government wants to divert spending from consumption to investment and net exports. Which combination of policy measures would be most likely to help it achieve this objective? So what should happen to interest rates and the rate of value added tax? What is value added tax? What is value added tax? VAT. VAT is indirect tax, जो goods पे लगता है. इनडायरेक्ट टैक्स होता है जो गुड्स पे लगता है. Is the answer B? Isha, for question 28, is the answer B? Right. Please check so that, yeah. So they want to switch demand away from private consumption to investment. And net exports. Net exports. Yeah, so what's the answer? Okay, yeah, sure. Sure, take your time. Okay, so Isha, you can look into it afterwards. Let's move to the next question. Have you found it? Right, forget about it. Forget about it. Right, I personally think it should be B, but Arbab has a different opinion on that, because if you want to encourage investment, interest rates should be low so that people find it easier to borrow. And value added tax, why the value added tax should be high? Because it's an indirect tax, just like GST, right? So if value added tax is high, then that basically means that it will discourage consumption. Right, it will discourage consumption. That's my reasoning. But Arbab said it's D, so interest rates should increase. Uh, so since we do not know the answers, let's not argue about it. Let's move to the next question for which we know the answers so that we can do it. Okay. So 21 says, according to loanable funds theory, what will cause the rate of interest to rise? A decrease in the demand for money, and increase in the level of savings, increase in the rate of investment, and increase in the supply of money. Yeah. So 21. What do you think is the answer to 21? Arbab and Nisha? So what was loanable funds theory? So loanable funds theory said, right, okay, you know this, right? Increase in the rate of investment. Yeah. So when investment increases, obviously that would mean that when investment increases, that means that there will be more demand for loans. So loanable funds theory was demand supply of loans. So when there's high demand for loans, obviously there will be higher interest rates, right? And in all the other three options, interest rate will fall, because if the demand for money is decreasing, interest rates will fall. If there is more level of savings, this means that the supply of loans will be more. More savings channelize into more supply of loans. So interest rates will fall. And if there is increase in the supply of money, again, the interest rates will fall. So the correct answer was C. Now moving to 22. What is most likely to contribute to high long-term growth rates of GNP per head, gross national product? What is most likely to contribute to high long-term growth rates of GNP per head? Government imposition of maximum prices for particular goods. Okay. Higher rates of trade union memberships among the labor force, higher ratio of savings to GNP, restrictions on inward foreign investment. Everyone would like to contribute high long-term growth rates of GNP per head. Interesting. I would say the answer is C. 22 is C. Right. Yeah. Okay, think about this. Others are not making much sense. So Isha, again, sometimes you have to, what is gross national product? Gross national product is the income that your nationals are earning across the globe. So gross national product is the income that your nationals are earning across the globe, right? So what it basically, right. Other three are exactly, the other three are wrong, right? Think about this. It says in the statement that what would contribute to a long-term growth rate. So just imagine if you have to just even think about the GDP. GDP is the national income of the country, which is the total income of all the people who are living in that country. So what would contribute to the long-term growth, right? What would contribute to the long-term growth, right? If you impose a maximum price on a good, that would not do much of a difference. That would not do much of a difference. Why? Because I mean, some products will become cheaper for the consumers, but then what? How will that result in higher GDP? How would that result in higher GDP? I mean, not really. Higher rates of trade union membership, again, higher the membership of trade unions, more will be your higher will be the disturbance and all that, right? Because trade unions sometimes are not very productive. They create nuisance, right? Like strikes, protests, and so on. Again, it's not directly adding to your output. Restrictions, again, D is completely incorrect, because if you're not letting more foreign direct investment come into your country, then you know how would the country grow and all that stuff, right? Now the correct answer to that would be right. The correct answer is high say ratios of savings to GNP. Now the thing is that when people are saving more, that will be channelized into investment, right? That will be channelized into investment. Isha, is it making sense? So when people are saving a bigger proportion nowadays, how do they save? Let's think about it. People save through a bank. So when they put their money in a bank and other people are coming in for investment or to borrow amount for consumption or things like that, then more money will be available for banks to lend to those people who are borrowing, right? So overall, there will be more activity and so on. And that is how the national income will increase. Is it making sense? Right. So that is what you need to do. Okay. A government finances an increase in spending by selling government securities. Right. What will be the immediate effect on the money supply on the foreign exchange reserves? Right. So government finances an increase in spending by selling government securities. So when you're selling government securities, people are buying it, the money is coming over here. So when the money is coming to the government, the interest rates are falling. So the money supply will definitely decrease and foreign exchange reserves. Right. Foreign exchange reserves. Right. Yeah. Yeah, only the policies are Bob, and a little bit about the development part. I mean, they don't really ask a lot of questions on the development, but just about the basic concepts of HDI. I mean, they don't really ask a lot of questions, but basic understanding of how a country becomes more developed, what are the indicators of development and all that stuff. Okay, so what will be the immediate effect on the money supply and on the foreign exchange reserves? Foreign exchange reserves. Okay, interesting. So money supply is reducing and interest rates, uh, foreign exchange reserves. So you're importing less. Is the answer D for question 21? Isha, is the answer D? Right. Can you not see the questions? So here's the question. I mean, I have myself opened it on a WhatsApp. So let me read it for you. Arbab, it says the question, a government finances an increase in spending by selling government securities to residents. What will be the immediate effect on the money supply and on the foreign exchange reserves? So when the government is selling securities, what effect does that have on the money supply of the country and on its foreign exchange reserves? That's the question, right? Right? That's the question. Oh, right. So Isha, is the answer D for question 21? Yeah, okay, perfect. Right. Money supply will increase. Great. So let's look at this. Think about this. So what you need to understand is that first things first, when government sells securities, people buy securities. So let's say I'm sitting in my home one day, I hear the advertisement on the newspaper, in the newspaper, that the government is selling securities. So it's just an investment thing, right? Government bonds and government securities. So I will buy that bond. How will I buy that bond? I will use the money that is lying in my bank account to pay for the bonds. So the money has been channelized from commercial banks. So I had my bank account in Standard Chartered. Do you remember we talked about this entire thing, open market operations? So when people buy securities, the money flows from commercial banks to the government, and the government then uses that money to do their spending, education, healthcare, whatever, right? Now, that being said, less money will be available in the commercial banks. When less money is available in the commercial banks, they can create less loans. They can't issue that many loans as much they used to, right? So the supply of money will be restricted, because in the modern economy, supply of money is not about the cash. Supply of money is not just about the cash. It's also about uh, it's also about the loans that are being created. So money supply will decrease. Yeah, just a second. Right, right, right. Government is giving money, money supply. Sorry, is the answer D? If the money is coming from people are investing, so their money is going to the government. Now the banks will be issuing less loans. Right. Okay, my bad. Yeah, yeah, sorry, my bad. I got it confused. I didn't know how I said D. No, 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 no. Right. So, okay, Arbab, what is your reasoning? What do you think? Why would the money supply increase? Selling government securities to residents. Selling. Hmm. No, but we are talking about the overall supply of money in the economy. Um, because do you remember we talked about in the open market operations, we said when government sells securities, the money comes to the government. And commercial banks, the profit-making banks, they do not have the money available to issue loans. They do not have the money available to issue loans, so money supply decreases. In future, when the government pays back in future, after borrowing from the people, when the government paybacks to its residents, that is when the money supply increases. So in this case, um, the money is going. Hmm, hmm, interesting. Okay. Yeah, that's confusing. Yeah. Hmm. Right. So let's just quickly Google it. Sells bonds, right? If the Fed buys bonds in the open market, it increases the money supply in the economy, right? Think about this. Isha and Irbab, have a look at this. If Fed, the Federal Reserve, Fed is the name for the Central Bank of USA, buys bonds, buys. So when you're buying, this is the opposite of what was mentioned in the question. It increases the money supply in the economy by swapping out bonds in exchange for cash to the general public. Conversely, if the Fed sells bonds, it decreases the money supply by removing cash from the economy in exchange for bonds. Does it make sense? Arbab, Isha, did you get this? So this is exactly what Isha and I are saying, that when the government sells securities, so who is buying it? The general public. And that reduces your money supply. That reduces your money supply. Is it making sense? Right? So I don't know how they said that. Okay. But to be honest, I'm clueless over here, so I can't really say. I was thinking it was B, but that's what I'm saying. Isha, I have no idea. I mean, at least the money supply thing would have been clear. I mean, foreign exchange reserves are a little hard to predict in this case, that what happens to foreign exchange reserves. But I mean, the money part should have been clear. By selling government securities. The best I can say is the answer is, incorrect. Okay, let's move to the next question, and then we'll come back to it later. Okay, in a banking system, all banks maintain 20% of deposits as cash. One bank receives a new cash deposit of $200. Subsequent net withdrawals of cash from the banking system are zero. Right. What will be the resulting increase in bank loans and the total increase in bank deposits? What will be the resulting increase in bank loans and the total increase in bank deposits? Okay. So the deposit of 220% is they maintain in cash, right? So 100 divided by 20, let me quickly do the calculation. That is 5. So 5 and then 5. 160 into 5. How much is 160 into 5? 160 into 5 is 800, I guess. 160 into 5 is 800. So increase in bank loans will be total increase in deposits. Is the answer C? Isha, is the answer to question 20 is C? Yeah. Okay, perfect. Now let's have a look at this. So the answer is C. Right. Yeah, that's what I'm about to explain you, right? So think about this. Do you remember we talked about liquidity, credit multiplier? Sorry, not liquidity. We talked about credit multiplier. What is credit multiplier? The formula of credit multiplier is, first let me write that down. So credit multiplier is calculated as 100 divided by liquidity ratio. So what is credit multiplier? Credit multiplier shows, I'll tell you in a bit, that what proportion credit multiplier, right? So credit multiplier is simply 100 divided by liquidity ratio. Liquidity ratio is basically what was mentioned in the question, that you have to keep 20% of the deposits in cash. Liquidity ratio is that what the question was saying, that you were supposed to keep, all banks are supposed to keep 20% of their deposits in cash. Liquidity, right? Liquidity ratio. Okay. Now this being said, What is credit multiplier? Credit multiplier shows you that what multiple of the deposits can be issued in cash. I repeat, credit multiplier shows you that what multiple meaning if the credit multiplier is 2, this means that out of all the deposits, you can issue 2 times the deposits in loans. You can issue 2 times the deposits in loans. Is this making sense? So credit multiplier tells you how many times of deposits can you issue in loans. Do you remember? We talked about this in class. Okay, now think about this. 100 divided by liquidity ratio. So the first thing that you were supposed to do on this question was to divide 100 by the 20%. Do you understand why was 20 the liquidity ratio? Let me show you again. Because it said that all banks need to maintain 20% of deposits as cash. So exactly this is what liquidity ratio is, that you have to maintain a certain percentage of the deposits in the form of cash. In this case, it was 20, right? So that gives you how much? 100 divided by 20 is 5. So that gives you a total of 5, right? So that is your credit multiplier. Now think about this. How much was the new deposits? How much were the new deposits? So $200 was the new deposits. Yes or no? So $200 is the new deposit. And what you have to do, you have to think about this, right? That not all of this 200 can be issued in loans. Not all of this 200 can be issued in loans. So you will divide this 200 in 2 categories. One would be the amount that you can issue in loans, and the other amount is that which you cannot issue in loans, right? So 80% of this amount you can issue in loans, and the remaining 20% you cannot issue in loans, because the question clearly said that 20% of deposits have to be kept in the form of cash. Yes or no? Students, are you following me? Now, if we divide 200 in 80%, what is 80% of 200? $160. So this means $160 can be used to issue loans. $160 can be used to issue loans, whereas the remaining $40 cannot be used to issue loans. This is making sense, right? How many of you got this over here, right? Isha and Arbab, let's look at this one more time. So whenever there's a question like this that asks you to calculate how much, will be the amount of loans issued, what you need to do is to first divide the amount in, first calculate the credit multiplier. I'll send you the new link, don't worry. And then divide the amount in 2 parts. So what is credit multiplier? The formula is always the same. That is 100 divided by liquidity ratio. Liquidity ratio was given in the question by saying that all banks have to maintain 20% of the deposits in cash. So 100 divided by 20 is giving you 5. Okay. The next thing is that what is the total number of deposits? $200. So you divide that $200 in the amount that can be used for issue loans. So this is the amount that can be used to issue loans, right? And this is the amount that cannot be used to issue loans. So you divide 200, so that gives you $160, and this gives you $40. So now you have to multiply the amount that can be used to issue loans. Now you have to multiply the amount, sorry about this writing tab is a mess. Now you have to multiply the amount that is available to issue loans with the credit multiplier. So 160 times 5 would be how much? 160 times 5 is your $800. So what is the total amount of new loans issued by the bank? $800. Is anything confusing about it? Students? Right? And then you could see that there was only one option with 800. So how much will be the increase in bank loans? $800. And total increase in deposits, the total amount, right, would be 200, which is the initial deposit, plus 800, the new loans that you're issuing. And that makes a total of 1,000. That makes a total of 1,000. Did you get this part? Isha and Bob, right? So if you are able to understand this part, then the other thing should be clear. You're saying 200, like 200 is the deposit now. So 200 is the additional amount one bank receives a new cash deposit. So let's say today I go to my bank and I deposit $200, right? Now, against that $200, so basically this is what the question was asking. Against that $200, how much will be the new amount of loans? Against that $200, how much will be the new amount of loans? So that's what the question was asking for. That's what the question was asking for. So what we did, right? So what we did, have a look at this one more time. So first things, the very first thing that you have to do in a question like this, calculate the credit multiplier, 100 divided by liquidity ratio. Liquidity ratio was clearly mentioned in the question, that was 20. So that gives you a credit multiplier of 5. Now, out of the new deposit, because think about this, Isha, for the previous deposits, it was happening whatever was happening. The new fresh deposit that has been made in the bank is of only $200. So we just need to calculate that against this $200, how much will be the new amount of loans issued. So you divide that $200 in two portions. 80% that can be used to issue loans, 80% that can be used to issue loans, and the remaining, how do we know this is the remaining? Because this is the liquidity ratio. The remaining 20%, which is the liquidity ratio, this is the amount that cannot be used to issue loans, right? So you divide $200 in two groups. One came out to be $160, which means that this can be used to issue loans. And the remaining is $40, which means that this cannot be used to issue loans. So when you multiply the credit multiplier with the amount that can be used to issue loans, that gives you the total new amount of loans that can be issued by the bank, right? Got it? Right? Okay. Now the next question says the diagram shows an individual worker's supply curve of labor. The hourly wage rate is W and the worker is required to work a standard 40 hours per week, right? Which area measures the minimum amount per week he would be willing to accept, right? The hourly wage rate is W and the worker is required to work standard 40 hours. The hourly wage rate is W and he's allowed to have to work a standard 40 hours a week. Which area measures the minimum amount per week he would be willing to accept? Hourly wage, which area measures the minimum amount per week he would be willing to accept? Area measure the minimum amount per week he would be willing to accept. Right. V plus X. Per week. Right. So you're saying B minimum amount per week. So V plus X. So V plus X is the area below the supply curve, but number of hours per week. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Got it. Got it. Right. So think about this. Yes. About very nice. So the idea is, you should have a look at this. So what they did was they were trying to confuse you, right? And the way they asked was a little, tricky. Think about this. So if you have this normal supply curve, now let's first understand what normal supply of labor would show. The normal supply of labor would show that what is the wage rate, obviously on the y-axis, and then you have the quantity or the number of hours, right? How many hours you're willing to work on the x-axis, right? Now that being said, if this is a point, so if this was the point where the 40 hours cuts, so that means that for you to work for 40 hours per week, what is the wage that you will be willing to accept? What is the wage that you're willing to accept? So you'll be willing to accept a wage rate of this much. Yes or no, right? Okay. Now this was not mentioned. Instead, the value that they had mentioned was this. The value that they had mentioned was this, right? That this is the standard wage. This is the standard wage. But think about this. If you ask about the worker, if you think from the worker's perspective, because the question was saying what is the minimum amount per week that this person would be willing to work. So how do we know what is the minimum amount that this person is willing to work? So that is area below the supply curve, right? So if you are being paid this wage rate, W1, if the worker is paid this much wage rate times the 40 hours that he has to work, right? So this area that was, because think about this was V, this was V, this was X, right? So this area below the supply curve shows you how much, but that doesn't include the other half. What is the minimum? Which area measures the minimum amount per week he would be willing to accept? Minimum amount per week he would be willing to accept. Okay, because this is your transfer earnings. This is your transfer earnings and it doesn't include your economic rent. Okay, get it. So do you remember we divided the total earnings of labor in two categories? Students, do you remember that we divide the total earnings of a labor in two categories? So one is transfer earnings and one is economic rent. So this upper half, which is below wage and above supply. So the upper half, which is below wage rate and above supply, that was your economic rent. And what is economic rent? Economic rent is any amount that you earn above your minimum compensation. Any amount that you earn above your minimum compensation that is needed to keep you in the current occupation. And the other one is transfer earnings. Transfer earnings is the minimum amount that you need to have to stick to the occupation. So since the question was saying that what is the minimum, are you getting me? And Isha, think about this. You have to think from labor point of view because it's asking you that how much the person would need. So forget about the W that was mentioned over here, the wage rate, standard wage, that was just to confuse you, right? If you ask the labor that how much is the minimum amount that he would be willing to work, that would be area below the supply curve. That would be area below the supply curve. So this point over here, that was the standard wage that the question said would then be irrelevant. This wage that the question said would then be irrelevant because we are looking from the perspective of what labor wants to accept, right? And did you get this? So let me send